Hello everyone, and welcome to week 7 of English 120. This week we're going to continue to work on our argumentative essay. You're going to be reading chapter 14 on drafting in the Bedford Researcher and chapter 15 on using sources effectively. You'll be using these chapters pretty closely as you draft your first research paper for this class. We'll have a discussion forum and a journal, but they'll be a little different this week. You'll be doing an argumentative essay peer review as part of the conversation, and then you'll be doing an argumentative essay self-review as part of your reflections. Finally, for comp class, you'll be completing correct paraphrasing and summarizing. So just to review, and you'll notice some good news, I've extended the deadline on our argumentative essay. I really wanted to give you some time to use all of the feedback you're going to be getting this week in order to improve your papers before you turn them in your final draft form. So just to remember, we're in week 7 and 8, and in this week you will be furthering your research, developing your thesis, and drafting your essay, and you'll be doing a peer review of your peer's paper, plus you'll be doing a self-review as part of your reflective journal. And then you'll be turning it in the following week. So just to remember, the writing process I brought up earlier in this semester goes like this. You start off, like we did last week, by planning your essay. You identify your purpose and your audience. You decide on one main point, and you did so in your elevator story. Now we're going to start working on taking that elevator story and creating a thesis, then organizing ideas by grouping or outlining the reasons you're going to make to prove your thesis. You're going to be drafting your essay after you've created an effective thesis. And then you'll be developing that essay by adding in quotations from the sources that you were able to find in your research. So just to talk a little bit more specifically about what you've done so far. So you should by now know the history of the topic you're going to be writing about. You should have created an elevator story where you know the main thing, the main problem you want to solve, or the main argument you want to support. You should have an idea of some supporting reasons you may be able to use, and you should have found some logos and some pathos to support those supporting reasons. If you haven't done all of that, you may need to do a little bit more research. So how do you go about developing a thesis? So now that you have your idea, you want to make sure that you're not just arguing something without a purpose. It's very important to consider also your audience when you're developing an argument. Now for this paper, your audience is fairly simple. Your audience is your peers in this class and myself. So you just have to think that you need to write appropriately for a college environment. Remember the example I gave you earlier. An example of an idea is parking in the morning before class is annoying. That just gives an opinion that someone has. It's not something that could really be supported with evidence. But if you said campus parking is a big problem at Napa Valley College, you could actually support that by finding data and statistics to support what you're saying. So when you write an argumentative essay, what you're going to be developing is a claim, and that's a statement you want us to believe by the end. It's your thesis statement. You're going to claim something that you're going to use, that you're going to give reasons that are going to support it as you go through your paper. The claim, as you state your claim, you want to know your intention for making that claim. What's your purpose for writing this paper? That's your intention. What do you want to prove, or what's your purpose for arguing what you're arguing? You'll be giving at least 3 reasons to make us believe the claim that you've made. And you'll support those by giving evidence, and that's quotations from the articles or essays that you found in Opposing Viewpoints database. In your introduction, you're going to use the history of the topic as a way to establish ethos, to show that you understand the conversation that you're joining. And you also want to be aware of what the counter arguments are to what you're stating, because you do want to address those either as you give each reason or as a final paragraph before you go to your conclusion. So what it looks like, if you look to the right, the introduction. In the introduction, you're going to introduce the history of your topic, and you're going to clearly state your claim. Then you're going to clearly convey your intention or purpose for writing the paper. And you'll develop your ethos. Why are you a trustworthy source? How are you not showing bias? Then in the body paragraph, you want to give, you want to give reasons to support your claim. You're going to use evidence to support those reasons, and your evidence should be both logos and pathos. So, for example, your first body paragraph could be, you'll give a reason and tell us how it relates to the claim you made. Then you'll use evidence in order to support what you're saying. You'll do this for each body paragraph that you write. Finally, in your conclusion, you're going to tell us how you've proven your claim. What has the reader gained by reading your paper? How does your paper relate to a larger purpose? For more details on how to write an effective introduction, see pages 238 to 240 in the Bedford Researcher. And for more details on writing an effective conclusion, see pages 242 to 244 in the Bedford Researcher. Also, if you want some more detailed information on how to write effective body paragraphs, see pages 233 to 236. And I want you to really pay special attention to creating transitions between the paragraphs. That's found on pages 235 and 236. A really important part of your research paper, of your argumentative paper, is going to be your use of quotations. Whenever you give reasons in your paper to support your claim, you'll be using these quotations to support what you're saying. Before you use a quotation, you'll need to introduce it. Begin by using an attribution, such as according to, and state the name of the author, the author's name claimed. These are ways to set up your quotation. You also want to provide a context. How does what is involved in this quotation relate to the point that you're making? Then when you quote, you want to quote strategically. You can use partial, complete, and block quotations, and there's examples of what these look like in our book. You can paraphrase, or you can summarize, and there's more information about that in comp class this week. You'll also, after you finish, you want to document the source in MLA format, and that's called an in-text citation. For a list of how to format in-text citations, see Chapter 21 of the Bedford Researcher. Then for an overall tutorial, what I was just talking about, see page 256. It's a really quick one-page tutorial on how to use quotations effectively. I also like to give you kind of an overview, sorry about all the text, but here's an overview of the do's and don'ts of quoting. Using textual sources meaningfully and appropriately in your own writing will help you orientate your reader, acknowledge your sources, and avoid plagiarism. The following are guidelines you should refer to when quoting and citing sources in your work. You want to write for an uninformed reader. Your essay should make sense to anyone who might read it, even someone who's not familiar with the text that you're citing from. Use quotations to illustrate and support your own ideas. Don't expect the quote to make the point for you. You need to explain it. Don't quote for the sake of quoting, and don't string quotes together. Use quotes in the service of your argument, purposefully to illuminate a point you want to make. Put quotation marks around the title of an essay, chapter, or article. Italicize the title of a book, magazine, or journal. And I have an example here. Please make sure you pay attention to this specific one. A lot of people make this mistake. When you use the ideas or words of another author in your own writing, you must refer to the name of the author and the title of the source. The first time you mention an author, use his or her full name. In subsequent references, you may use the last name only. Never use the first name only. And I have an example. If you use quotes, you'll notice that you place the page number the quote came from in parentheses after the quotation marks and before the period. If you look above, 72 is in parentheses and the period is found afterwards. If you use quotes but don't need a parenthetical citation, place periods, commas inside quotation marks. And here's an example of what that looks like. If you use Hughes maintains that, don't use a comma before the quotation. So this is if you're using attribution, like Hughes maintains that. If you use Hughes maintains, asserts, says, argues, use a comma before the quotation. And here's an example of what that looks like. If you borrow an idea or information that is not verbatim, that's exact words, place a parenthetical citation right after your paraphrase and before the period. And here's an example. Never drop a quote into your essay. You never want to just begin paragraphs or sentences with a quotation. Always lead into your quote using various attributive tags, such as claims, argues, insists, explains, suggests, concedes, concludes, agrees, proposes, maintains, predicts, points out, questions, adds, contradicts, etc. Notice that each implies something about your attitude toward what the writer is saying. So make sure you choose your attributions very carefully. Your quotes must make grammatical sense. They must either be A, a grammatically independent unit or a complete sentence, or B, a grammatical part of your sentence, a phrase or clause that fits inside your sentence. Don't create fragments or run-ons with quotes. Note, use a colon when you've made a full statement and are now supplying a quote to illustrate it. And here's an example of how to do that. Always interpret, explain, or comment on the quotation in relation to your argument. Cass claims that we must uphold the primacy of human freedom and dignity even over scientific discovery. But what kind of human freedom and dignity does a person with a spinal cord injury who is confined to a wheelchair and unable to even feed himself have? Cass is mistaken. We must use scientific discovery to restore freedom and dignity to those who have suffered serious injury. Quotes that take up 4 or more lines in your essay get indented using block quotation format. Use these sparingly. That means no more than 1 per paper. Introduce block quotations with a colon, omit quotation marks, and double space the indented quote in keeping with the rest of the paper. Note, punctuation comes before the parenthetical citation in a block quotation. Ellipses. Don't use ellipses at the start or end of your quotation, even if your quote begins or ends mid-sentence. The only time you should use ellipses is when you remove words from a quotation, in which case the ellipses belong in brackets. Brackets are used when you insert or change words in a quote. It's best not to tamper with quotes, as you risk altering their meaning or disrupting their integrity. In general, avoid bracket insertions, unless you need to clarify a term or make your quote grammatical. Alright, I hope all that information was very helpful about how to use quotations effectively in your argumentative paper. Spend the first part of the week drafting your argumentative paper. For this week's discussion forum, you'll be posting your argumentative paper, then choosing one of your peers' papers to peer review. You are only to choose one paper to peer review. Step 1, please visit the peer review workshop conversation and post your paper as an attachment to your post. Introduce your paper by posting your elevator story and any questions you have about revising it. Please also post your preferred email address so your peer can contact you as soon as they choose your paper. and make sure you check that email. Step 2. Review the list of peers who have posted their paper already and choose one peer's post to respond to. You are only required to review one peer's paper. After you select your peer, immediately respond to his or her post saying that you will peer review his or her paper. You'll also need to send an initial email to your peer to make sure they know that you are their peer review partner. Each person can only have one peer review partner. Step 3. Once you respond to the post and send an email to your selected peer, download your peer's paper and fill out the peer editing checklist listed under this week's content. Step 4. Email the filled out peer review checklist, an edited draft of their paper, to your peer by the end of the week. Please make sure you also answer any questions posted by the peer in the discussion forum. Step 5. In order to receive full credit for this assignment, you will also need to turn the peer review checklist and edited paper that you did of your peer's paper to the peer review assignments listed under this week's content by Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. I apologize for the typo. Step 6. Please revise your paper based on your own self-review and the peer review. As always, you need to select your peer. You need to post your initial post by Saturday night. So please make sure you have a draft and you've posted it by 11:59 on this Saturday night. Then you need to post your peer review by the following Tuesday. And here's an example of what the peer review looks like. Please review it, and if you have questions, you can email me, and I'm also available during office hours. But this is also posted under this week's content. Finally, for your reflections journal this week, you're going to be doing a self-review of your own paper. Please review this list of things that I'd like you to look at, and this is just, I'd like you to look through all of these and write answers to these. You need to write at least 250 words, so reflect on all of these editorial areas and write a 250 word response talking about what steps you're going to take to revise your paper. Finally, for comp class, you're going to be learning about correct paraphrasing and summarizing. Alright, that's it, you guys. Next week, we're going to begin talking about the Valley of the Moon, so please make sure you have your book available by next week, and we're going to be watching a couple of great videos on Jack London and reading the introduction to Valley of the Moon. If for some reason you did not buy the correct edition of the Valley of the Moon, then you need to contact me so you can get a copy of the foreword by Kevin Starr. That's what we're going to be reading for next week. So please make sure, if you don't have the version of the Valley of the Moon that I had for sale at the bookstore, and that is the University of California Press edition. If you don't have that, again, please contact me so that I can get you a copy of the foreword. Alright guys, that's it. Good luck writing your papers. I'm sure they're going to be great. I will be sending back feedback on your first papers very soon. I apologize. I have a lot of grading to do, but what I've read so far has been really, really great. So, looking forward to seeing you online. As always, please contact me if you have any questions.